Candace Fish planned to open a microschool with just a few students, but when the former public school teacher launched her low-cost school, Freedom Prep, in August of 2022, she had over 130 learners signed up. Parents in Wichita, Kansas, and the greater Wichita area are looking for more options, and the collaborative entrepreneurial community there is creating them. It was great to visit with Candace and her fellow entrepreneurial educators in Wichita recently, and it's such a pleasure to share Candace's story with you today. Candace Fish, welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here. I just love your story, especially this idea of creating a micro school that then isn't so micro when it
Yeah.
opens its doors. And I want to get to that story and dig into that a little bit more. But before we do, tell us a little bit more about your background. How did you get into education and teaching to begin with? What were you doing within the public school system before we talk more about your decision to leave?
Sure. So my story in education actually started when my youngest child went to kindergarten. I had been a stay-at-home mom, had raised 5 kids. And when the youngest went to school, I wanted something else to do. And I started substitute teaching and fell in love with teaching and just really enjoyed being part of that. So at that point, I decided to go back to college and get a second degree in education and pursued that. And then along the way, I did several different roles. I taught in elementary, I taught in special ed in elementary. Then I wound up going on and getting a master's in special education. And from that, I wound up in middle school with behavior kids. So that was a journey. And I did that for a few years and I've just kind of done the whole gamut of education from elementary up through 8th grade. And that's where I found myself last year when I decided it was time to do something new. So,
Yeah, and when we talked in person in Wichita, Candace, you mentioned that you had always been intrigued by the idea of homeschooling, but you had to work, so it wasn't going to be possible for your own children, but it was always something that appealed to you, that sort of personalized learning model. I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that as you know, kind of your thinking around homeschooling and maybe eventually creating something that would be that same type of environment for other children and for parents like you who really wanted to homeschool but didn't have the ability to do that, again being a working parent and so on.
sure. I did homeschool for just a short time when my kids were all younger, and I enjoyed that. But they ranged in age from about 2 to 9, and that's a lot. I applaud homeschool parents who can do that. And then I wound up, our oldest daughter actually got to spend some time in New York City when she was 12 doing some acting and modeling and things. And so I homeschooled her while we were there. So I kind of gleaned the best of homeschooling, found what the challenges were, but also what I loved about it. And I loved the individuality of it. I loved how I could tailor things to my kids' interests and my kids' needs. And it didn't matter what grade level they were, we could make learning work in a mixed environment. And so my 5 year old would join in sometimes with 8 and 9 year olds and get to be part of what we were doing and learning from that. And I felt like that was really valuable and very rich. And that was kind of the piece of homeschooling that I wanted to pull into more of a school setting, was that idea that we can make learning fit children's needs and desires and interests, and they don't have to necessarily be in the normal box of education.
And so then in your time teaching in the public schools, as you have this sort of homeschool model in the back of your head, something that you want to create outside of the system, what started to happen, I guess, and when did you start to think that you might launch out on your own?
So I've actually been planning this for the last 10 years. I kind of, being in the public schools, I saw there were things there that I thought were great and things that I thought they were doing well. But then I saw so many kids falling through the cracks and so many kids that their needs weren't being met because the way they learned didn't fit that traditional model. And then as I kind of went through special education, I got to work with kids that had behavior issues for 3 years, and I actually really enjoyed that. That was beneficial because I got to pull in some of that homeschool mindset because I had everything from kindergarten to 5th grade in one classroom, and I had to figure out how to make things work for kids with autism, for kids with, just extreme behavior challenges, for all these different learning styles. And I kind of got to do what I wanted to do, but still had those restraints of, well, you still have to use this curriculum and you still have to do grade level standards, which didn't make sense for those kids. And so that was kind of an interesting pivot. And then when it all kind of clicked was COVID. I mean, COVID changed everything. COVID changed education. It changed parents' perception of education. It changed how children learned. And I think that was really the shift. And what we found in our area was a lot of parents that said, this isn't what we want anymore. We want something different. And so that's kind of when it all clicked. And I said, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I feel like this is the time. And parents were hungry for something different. They were ready to try something new. They were open to new ideas, and it just kind of all clicked into place at the right time.
So take us through that process. Obviously, COVID hits. You have this idea to create some kind of micro school or some more personalized learning environment that would, again, blend the best of homeschooling with the best of kind of individualized schooling in an offsite location. What were the steps that you took and when?
So last school year, I was actually in a middle school teaching, again, special ed behavior kids. And I think it was like early October, one of our churches in our area hosted a night that was an alternative education night. And I thought, oh, wow, what an open door to kind of throw my idea out there and see if anybody is interested. And so I contacted the lady that was kind of heading that up, and I said, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. I'm just kind of trying to gauge interest. Could I come? Could I speak? And she said, absolutely. Come on. We'd love to have you. And at this meeting, we had people who were already kind of doing the micro school idea. And there were people there that had opened their own schools, and they were just kind of sharing more information. And so I got to kind of pitch my idea and say, here's what I want it to look like. I want it to look like homeschool in a building, basically. And I had a lot of parents that were interested. So then I started, I found a Facebook group of a nearby town. And it was a disgruntled parents group where they were frustrated with what was going on in their education system. They were tired of kids being forced to wear masks. They were tired of the shutdowns and all of that stuff. And so I threw it out there. Here's my idea. This is what I'm wanting to do. And within the next 3 days, I had about 300 Facebook messages from parents saying, I'm interested, tell me more. I'm interested, tell me more.
Wow.
And it was at that point that I went, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. We need to do this. So
wow. And I think the statistic is that in Kansas statewide, public school enrollment has dropped by about 15,000 students since the start of the pandemic, most not returning. So kind of continuing, clearly parents looking for something else, and then entrepreneurs like you creating it. It's also interesting that just this very simple alternative education conference, as you said, put on by a nearby church, was the catalyst not only for you but for other Wichita entrepreneurs who I talked about. So it shows that you don't need anything too fancy, but just to bring together people under kind of a common theme of let's think about alternative education models or micro schools can be just this wonderful prompt to build something new and better. And so you had these 300 Facebook messages. Clearly you saw that there was demand, but you're still at this time working in the public school system?
I was.
Yeah.
I was working by day, and evenings and weekends I spent figuring out how to make this happen. At the end of October, I actually was with a group of my girlfriends, and I told them my idea. And one of them in the group, you met, Sarah, said, I love that idea. I want to be part of that. And so she jumped on. So we would spend our evenings on the phone, and the two of us making plans. And then just by, the grace of God, I wound up having to have knee surgery in April, and I was home for the rest of the school year. And so since I had a long-term sub, I didn't have to do any lesson plans anymore. And I got to spend that last 8 weeks of school, honestly, getting things going and making plans and getting started and contacting people and setting up the business and all of those things. And then Sarah and I spent our entire summer doing that. So it was a very fast process, a lot faster than I had intended. But everything just has kind of fallen into place the way it was supposed to.
And Sarah was also a public school teacher at the time.
Was,
And so you
yeah.
both jumped ship to create Freedom Prep.
Yeah, we
And I
did.
imagine it was still somewhat scary. I mean, you had this obvious parent interest, these 300
Mhm.
messages from parents. At what point did you know that you were going to have some real critical mass? At what point did you realize that, yeah, we're going to open and there's going to be students in the seats?
Yeah, so we had set out, we had several meetings. I think we hosted four kind of like open house events at my church, honestly, and just made them information meetings. And the first one we had 82 people at. The second one we had 65. The third one we had about 60. And we were kind of like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of people. And it was new people every time. It wasn't returners. And so we knew that interest was going to get big. And then we had set a date. We told people we need to know by May 31st. That was kind of our cutoff date so that we knew what we were going to be starting with. And on May 31st, when we went through and tallied all of our applications we had gotten in and all the pre-enrollment money and that kind of thing, we had 120 kids. And we sat here at my kitchen table and looked at each other and went, wow, we need to hire some teachers.
Wow.
And then it kind of grew from there. We just, we had several more people that kept calling and we worked them in and wound up starting the year with 132.
What was that like for you when you realized you were going to have more than 120 kids? What did you think?
A little bit terrifying, little bit exciting, a little bit overwhelming, and just okay, God, here we go. I'm gonna need some help. And we just kind of, decided, okay, if there's this much interest, clearly there's a need, and we're doing what we are meant to be doing. And Sarah and I both just really embraced early on that we felt like this was what we've been called to do, and all of the experiences that we had had were beneficial and helped. I actually taught in a first year Christian school 1 year, and that experience alone was so great because I got to see what it was like to start a school. And so that was really rewarding as well. And then, yeah, just Sarah and I kind of planning and getting things together, and we realized that this was a need and that we were going to meet that need, and we ran with it.
And what is the differentiator for Freedom Prep from compared to these other public schools as well as other available private schools in the Wichita area? What is it about Freedom Prep that you think attracted so many families?
I think the biggest difference, honestly, was we started with a ridiculously low tuition. We have some phenomenal private schools in Wichita. We really do. We have some schools on the east side of town that are doing great things, and we have a few on the west side of town that are doing great things. But they're not affordable for the average American family, especially coming through COVID and recession and all of the economic struggles that people have had. It just wasn't a financial option for a lot of people to send their kids to private school. So that was probably the biggest thing, was that. Second, we really embraced this homeschool concept. And so we got a lot of homeschool families that, because of all those changes, because of the economic situation, these moms had to go back to work, but their kids had never been in public school. And that was not what they wanted, but they couldn't afford the $15,000 a year price tag. And so we were kind of that answer to prayer that a lot of people were looking for, in that we were an affordable solution to their students' education while still giving them that same kind of environment and that homeschool mindset of teaching.
So then how did you come up with this pricing model, which, as you say, is quite low compared to other private schools? And is it sustainable for you as a founder?
Yeah, so it won't be that low forever. We know that it's going to have to increase in the future. We're kind of taking this first year. Part of the reason why we went with such low tuition was obviously for families that, we knew needed it, but also we wanted to kind of give people that, give us a chance for a year. Let us, give us a chance. You're not going to be out $20,000. Let us try and see how we can do. And so we set it low. Sarah and I talked about it. We prayed about it. We just very much felt like this is what it should be. and God's going to work it out. And so far he has day by day and major faith steps. It's worked out. It won't be that low forever because we look to expand. We want to have a second location, and we've got a lot of things we want to add. Parents want us to add sports, and they want us to add music, and they want us to add all those extra things. So we can't forever do it at that rate, but our goal is always to be the low cost option in Wichita. So that means going out and soliciting donations, trying to set up some scholarship funds and that kind of thing with, churches and businesses in our area that are willing to do that kind of thing. So we're going to really work at trying to build scholarship money so that those kids who need that lower cost, even if we raise tuition, can still be there.
I love that. So you may need to raise tuition, but that you're still going to try to make it as financially accessible as possible through
absolutely
donations and charity and so on.
Right.
Just such a great model. So you mentioned that you're outgrowing your space already. You've only been there for a few months, and you have a lovely space with multiple classrooms, multiple teachers. The kids are really working on more individualized learning. They have a lot of freedom and flexibility. So it is blending that homeschool and school environment you were seeking. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about some of the challenges of being a school founder, being an education entrepreneur. Kansas is relatively easy compared to other states to be a small business owner. It's relatively easy to start a new business, including an education business. Compared to other places, it's also relatively easy to homeschool. So what were some of your challenges, if any, when you were launching?
Yeah. So our biggest challenge is, of course, first of all, finding teachers, because since our tuition's low, we don't pay a ton, and so finding teachers that could and were willing to work for that, for what we were able to pay. And fortunately, we found several teachers that had already retired from the public school system. And so they did already have that, they had their retirement income and they were able to do it. We found a few teachers who just were blessed that their spouse had a solid income that supported their family's needs, and they were able to do that. So that was, probably our biggest challenge. Our other challenge is we're not the right place for everyone. And we know that, we accept that, we are okay with that. So even in this year, we've had a couple teachers that have said, this just isn't for me. This is not what I want to do. And they've left. And I don't panic about it, because I've said from day one, this is the right place for the right people. And so if it is the right place for you, great. If it's not, find the right place, and that's okay. We wish you the best. So, but that's been a challenge that we have lost some staff over this first semester. We've lost a few students because just wasn't the right fit for them, but that's okay. There are so many great options. I want everyone to be where they are in the right spot for them, where it fits their needs, where it, works for them. And we're just not it for everybody. And I think that you just have to accept that that's okay.
And do you think that's because you are much more focused on kind of individualized learning, that it's not cookie cutter, and that might not be something that some people are familiar with, both as educators or as parents? What is your sense of what is the distinguishing factor for you?
Yeah, I think one of the big things, and I guess it has really been a challenge, is we had a lot of kids that came to us with a grade level, and their parents assumed that's their grade level, but that's really not where the kid was at. So we had kids come in as seventh graders, but really they were at about a fourth grade level when we did math assessments. Well, the public school didn't tell them that, because they were getting grade level standards. And so they had all these gaps in learning. And so a lot of it, especially the first 9 weeks of school, we were going back and trying to find those gaps and filling those gaps. And so that was kind of a challenge. And we had some parents that were like, why are you doing fourth grade math? And we kept saying, just trust us, because once we fill those gaps, they're going to have leaps and bounds of progress, because now we filled the holes that are holding them back. And we found that to be very true. We've found that they very much now have filled their gaps, and they are soaring, because we just took the time. So but I think that has been kind of a challenge is that parents had to be on board with the fact that we're going to do what's right by your kids that not may not be what you necessarily thought was right for them.
Yeah, and I imagine that's also hard for a teacher too, that if they think they're coming in teaching seventh grade, but then they have kids who are more at the fourth grade level, that can be a challenge for them if they're not used to
Right.
personalized mastery-based learning.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, so you talked about wanting to expand. What does that look like for you? Do you intend to continue to get bigger? And I mean, again, this already you left the idea of a micro school way back in October of
Yeah.
2021. You're now a low cost private school of substantial size. So, what does growth look like for you?
So our first step is where we are, our building. We don't really have a lot of land. We don't have much of a playground. The kids make do, and they really haven't complained, which thank the Lord for that. But we're making do with what we've got. But our intention is that we'd like to find another facility somewhere in the general vicinity to move our elementary kids to, where they could have a larger playground, where they could have, more classroom space, and then that way, our current facility can really be a middle and high school and just tailor to the needs of older kids. And then let our elementary school, be more of an elementary school. That's our first step. After that, we're not really sure. We've had people ask us to move to the east side of town and open a location. I don't know if we'll do that because there are a lot of private schools over there. We've had people ask us if we would franchise our idea. Man, when I have time in my day to work on that, I'd love to. I think our idea is good and I'd love to share it with other people, but I don't know. All right. So our first step is just really to have a place where the kids can have more land. We eventually want to have our own location that has a lot of land so we can have a garden. We want the kids to be able to be part of gardening and, teach all of those basic life skills that we've kind of lost along the way. Sarah has her heart set on having chickens, and God bless her. That's not my calling, but maybe whatever. So, that's kind of our next step is just to getting to a facility where we can have more outdoor space. We can do more outdoor learning. We can do more exploration and that kind of thing. And then we'll see. We just, we'll see what happens along the way.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, COVID really changed everything, that was the trigger for a lot of parents to seek other options and for you as an entrepreneurial educator to finally make the leap. Do you think that that parent demand is still there now in 2022 as schools are reopened, things are relatively back to normal? Is the demand for these alternative learning models still there and strong?
Absolutely. I get phone calls and emails weekly of parents. I think that a lot of parents just keep saying, I'm just going to give it one more year. We're just going to give it one more year and see if it gets better. We're going to just give it a little bit more time. And what they're finding is it's not. Test scores, I know in Wichita, the test scores of our students are sadly low. Proficiency in math and reading is sad. It's in the 20 to 30%, of proficient students, and it's not getting better. And so it's not the fault of the teachers. It's a system that's broken. And, there are some excellent educators here in Wichita whose hands are tied, who've been told this is how you have to do things, and it's not working. And so until the education industry as a whole realizes and decides it's time to make those changes, it's not going to change. And so, we get calls, oh, we need to make a change. Yeah, we'd like to move our kids at semester. Do you have openings? Because parents are just seeing that they need something else. So yeah, I think there is definitely a demand. Wichita is a big enough city that, there's what 12, 15 of us in our group that, that we meet of alternative schools, and there's room for more. There really is. So
Yeah, it's really great to see the spontaneous education entrepreneur community developing in Wichita. There is the new group called the Wichita Innovative Schools and Educators Community, WISE,
mm-hmm.
which again was sort of this organic growth from a group of local parents and educators who wanted to come together and help support one another and connect and build community. What is your sense of the community there of entrepreneurs and the collaboration that you see among other school founders?
Oh gosh, yeah, that group has just been a real godsend because, I had been invited several times and I didn't go and I didn't go. I was tired when I got home and thought, no, I don't need one more thing to do. And then finally I decided to go one night, and just having other people who understand the challenges, who understand what you're facing to, the first night I kind of said, here's all the things that are going wrong. And they were all like, oh, you need to contact this person. You need to do this. You need to connect with this person. And they all had things because they'd already walked that road. And so I think that has been a huge benefit. But then also, hearing we have so many different models within that group. We have true micro schools. We have micro schools that are connected to the public school system soon. We have one that's mainly a pre-K program with a little bit of school age. We have one that's an all outdoor. I mean, there's such diversity that even within my own school, I think of kids and I think, this is what we're doing isn't really working for this kid. She would really benefit from being at that school. And I don't hesitate to call those parents and say, hey, I think you ought to go check this place out. Not that I want to get rid of your kid, but I think that'd be a better fit. And I know they do the same for me. We had a little girl that came in that we really didn't have a spot for, and she was only 4. And I sent her to to Kim's school, and she's doing great there. She's thriving. And so, we kind of have that we can pass around and help kids, meet the kids' needs the best way we can by sharing our resources and by collaborating and knowing what each other's strengths are and kind of what we have to offer and working together. It just doesn't need to be a competition. We all are here with the same mission to make education better for kids. And so I feel like we just have a really neat opportunity to work together and make that happen.
Yeah, the collaboration in these entrepreneurial clusters of educators is really outstanding. And it's not just in Wichita, but other areas of micro schools and education entrepreneurs that I've visited across the country of just, there is not that competition. It is much more about knowledge sharing and referring families to another program that might be a better fit for them, and, sharing resources and tools and advice and encouragement. It's amazing to see. And so, I wonder along those lines, when you think about sort of the future of the micro school movement or of these education entrepreneurial clusters and innovations in these areas, what do you see over the next few years?
Oh, wow. I think they're just going to keep growing and multiplying. And I think that parents, no matter their background, are finally going to have options that fit their family. We are a Christian school. A lot of the groups in our WISE group are, but then there's a few that are not. And that's fine. So, I think every family, there are options available, whether you want a religious thing or a non-religious, whether you want an outdoor program or something that's more traditional. Do you want kids in traditional grade levels? Our kids aren't. Our kids are grouped kind of more by ability, and they float. So they go all over the building for different subjects to, based on their needs. That works for some people. I just think that there's just so many options. And I think as we continue to grow and add more schools, parents are finally going to be in control of their children's education, and they're going to be able to choose what's right for their family. And maybe even within that, each child, I have Greengate that I know you visited here. We share a family. One of the children goes to that school and 2 of them come to mine because it's what's best for them. And I think that there's just a really neat opportunity for parents to finally be in control of where their kids learn and how they learn.
I completely agree. And I just love the diversity of models that you're mentioning, from, as you said, faith-based programs like yours to unschooling programs, to, structured, unstructured, all kinds of different educational philosophies and approaches for families to choose. And as you're saying, even within families to make decisions that are right for each child, which is really exciting to see. I wonder if you think about, again, thinking about the future of education, do you think that the public schools will change, will kind of recognize the competition that is occurring with entrepreneurial educators like you outside of the system, and then that will prompt a change internally? Or I guess, where do you see the public school system going?
I think it's hard to change such a massive system. If you think about how large the public school system is and the amount of government control that's involved there, I think it would be really hard for them to truly change. And I also think that, it's one of those, we've always done it this way, and so I think it would take quite a lot. And I think it would take a lot of really innovative educators saying, no, we have to do something different. And it's going to take some people at the top listening and really, truly hearing what teachers are saying and what families are saying. And I don't know. I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, honestly. I think that, yeah, I think it's going to take a lot to make changes there. Not because they don't know there needs to be change, not because they don't want change, but it's just not easy to do in a system that large.
Mm. So it does sound like there is a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurial educators, former public school teachers, even like you, who may want to do something different, build something new, to go ahead and do that. What advice do you have for them?
Oh, wow. I would say my greatest advice is connect with someone who's already doing it. I know that was such a huge thing. I knew several people who were, and they were great wealth of resources. I would say, start the hard parts, the business side early and give yourself time to plan and be prepared. But really seek out people that can help. We have another classical school opening next year in Wichita, and I invited him to our last meeting and he came and he messaged me later and was like, man, that was so valuable and gave me so much information. And he's not even open yet. So it was good to give that information. So I would say connect, find people who are already doing it to connect with, because we are more than happy to share our experience and what's been good and what's been bad and how to help kind of navigate those things.
I love that advice. And I love that connecting with families, prospective families ahead of time too, which seemed like you had a lot of
Absolutely.
success with finding these Facebook groups and other
Yeah.
social media groups, and then hosting several of those information sessions that you did. I think
Yeah.
you said you had 3 through the course of the summer leading up to opening, which can also be really helpful.
Yes,
So
definitely.
so, Candace, if my listeners want to reach out to you, find out more about Freedom Prep, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
We have a website, but we're kind of working on making that a lot stronger. So the best way is you can email me at freedomprep@currently.com. .com, freedomprep@currently. I think so. Or you can call the school 316-358-7420. And we'd be happy to meet with you, talk to you, whatever you might need.
Well, best wishes to you and to Freedom Prep as it continues to grow and inspire other entrepreneurial educators throughout Wichita and beyond. Candace Fish, thank you again for being on the LiberatED podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.